Hello, kings and queens of the internet. My name is No Socks. Welcome to week 5 of the weekly commentary series. This week, wanted to step into a question I have been kind of grinding up in my own head and trying to dissect and understand. So I figured I'd talk out loud to you here today. The idea is that I believe fear can ultimately be a tool in self guidance. And I find that that becomes more and more true the more I look into it because we as human beings see fear in the same way we see horror. They often go hand in hand. They aren't one to one, but fear and horror being that kind of blending together of the same color on the spectrum, we can pull a lot of parallels from it that horror is something that we feel genuine physical chemical reactions in our brain to seeing that often traumatize us and put us into these larger boxes of emotion later down the line. And fear is a natural long-term response to seeing horror. Horror being anything that horrifies the person. It doesn't have to be anything specific. But that fear is the long-term receipt that we look at and feel from the past experience on a more regular basis. It's kind of like a translator of the past memory into the current self, the long term self, rather than the short term in the moment. And oftentimes I feel fear is the quintessential, what's the right word for this? Quintessential embodiment of exactly what we want or need. Fear is so emotional that it connects to the animalistic self rather than the rational conscious self. And by being afraid, we touch onto the pattern of our own selves, which terrifies us. It is horrifying to find because we, as predatory animals, as apex predators, hunt off of patterns. We gather off of patterns. Our survival is entirely based around finding patterns. And when we find patterns and we find the pattern of ourselves specifically, we find a weakness in a system because we naturally are attempting to locate those weaknesses in other things. And when we locate those weaknesses, we know how to attack it more efficiently. So when we find the weakness in ourselves, which is also the pattern in ourselves, we find our weaknesses and we feel fear. That's the animalistic self that feels fear. But I also find that horror is just as like fear as fear and horror go hand in hand. Um there is still an effect that happens on the rational self. There's the animalistic self and the rational self, and they go hand in hand as well, right? You can't have one without the other. You can't have fear without being afraid. And to be afraid, you must be in it. You enter a state of mind by being in a place that causes fear. And in the moments that cause that fear, that horror, trying to kind of not backpedal, um, redirect the the perspective of fear and where this idea comes from is that if something happens to the rational, if it happens to the whole self, it causes fear. Something happens to the rational self, and the rational self becomes wiser because it learns more by entering a state of horror which causes fear. And this cycle is why I believe it can be used as guidance. You will feel fear by being in a place that horrifies you or could horrify you, has the potential to. And by entering it, you feel the physical fear that manifests in the animalistic body. Yet the rational self has to make a decision, which means it has to look around and find something. It finds a pattern in that moment. It finds a weakness in the time where it is feeling scared because it's aware of its own weakness. And by doing so, it creates a pattern of embracing fear that helps you and makes you better every time you do something. Anyway, new video coming out this weekend. Like, subscribe if you made it this far. You get a kiss. Mwah.